Happy NSAC Day. Today is the annual day of the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, and it's the day we celebrate the founding of the organization under which Church of the Spirit is a part. So that happened 132 years ago. I want to talk a little bit about that and why it's important to me and all of us. And also I want to talk about you and how you found this church. Sound okay? So back in the 1800s, there was a lot going on, and spiritualism was started in 1848. And it's just spread. Everyone was interested, and it was like wildfire. There was someone in the early days that is a part of our history here in Chicago who got involved, and it was her, Mercy Cadwallader, and others who started what was called then the National Spiritualist Association. So it was Chicago, of all places in the entire world, Chicago, our church, the beginning. It wasn't this exact building, but it was what would move to this building. In fact, I like to point out that the chair for the pastor is from Mercy, and there's a plaque on it that she had attached to say, "This is my gift to the church." I like to think about that. So she was the type of woman that thought women could wear pants. I know, it's shocking. Back then, spiritualist churches were a place for freedom of expression. You could talk about what you wanted to talk about and not feel so just confined. So they were often a place for social justice. Mercy liked that the spiritualist movement was for the abolition of slavery. And many of the other organized religions, mainstream, weren't about that. They just wanted the status quo, and they thought it was good for you, it's good for us, keep it going, right? And also, spiritualists were for the woman to be able to vote. And so it kind of grew women in mediumship, and it drew them to this religion. And that's why so many more mediums from the start were women. So there was a lot of things going on as time moved forward. We all know the Salem witch trials, right? Over in Massachusetts, and how people were burned because they were suspected of being witches. So there was a Witchcraft Act that eventually faded out, luckily. But there was still that lingering kind of fear of people who were different and had, beliefs that weren't mainstream. So then the 1920s came, and first spiritualism was super popular with the Civil War because of all the people losing their family to the war. They wanted to connect. And then it kind of died down a little bit, and then it resurged at the end of World War I because of the same reason. So in the 1920s, there were these tea rooms with mediums, like kind of like parlors and seances. That was really popular. But again, there was always this kind of fear and in the background, kind of like federally. So US immigration laws prohibited gypsies from entering America. So gypsies had already entered America. There might have been like 1 million already here, but they tried to stop it. They didn't like the scrying with the crystal balls and the little coaches. And gypsies were discriminated against, so they needed some form of life. So they had kind of a traveling act. So they were treated very unfairly. But it started more of a discrimination against another class of people, just like the witches. Eventually, there became something known as, even in Chicago, statutes against fortune telling. Fortune telling. So mediums, we know, are not fortune tellers, but you know how people just kind of lump people together, even with immigration and immigrants. They just sort of, that's everybody that ever, you know. So it was a little suspect. Then the big thing that really hurt spiritualism was the Harry Houdini debunking experiment. It made huge news. He picked one medium, just one, and just tried to prove that she was a fraud because she couldn't guess or know her his wife's secret code word. So imagine how nervous. She did do trickery and it was exposed. This made headlines. So it cast kind of a negative pall across all of mediums. But the truth was that people who had gone to mediums that gave them accurate messages knew it was really a thing. And it's also true that there were some that did shortcuts for their own gain. But still, those who knew the truth that it is real persisted. And Mercy and Harrison Barrett, not only did they start and others start the NSA that later became NSAC, but they started the Mediums Education and Defense Fund. Did you know that today, even now, the NSAC will legally represent a medium at a spiritualist church if they get accused of something and sued or sent to prison? It's part of why we belong. So before the last minister, before our minister, at the start, there was Reverend Joseph. Reverend Joseph was our reverend at Church of the Spirit. So he did something that was brilliant. He and some other spiritualist churches began taking precautions by putting a Bible up here on the lectern. And you know why? Because police would storm in and barge in, walk up, and or try to arrest the mediums for not practicing a real religion and doing fortune telling. So Reverend Joseph would point to the Bible. We still have it. It's underneath because we have the laptop, but we still have that original Bible. He would point to it and say, no, we're really a religion. So that's how we got through that kind of persecution. Sometimes when a church didn't have a Bible back in the day and were taken away, they would take them to the station and they would have a trial and everything. And Mercy from our church would go and stand before the judge and defend the medium before the judge. She took it very seriously. And otherwise, without that kind of defense, some were fined, some were imprisoned, and some were even sent to what back then were called insane asylums. I hate that term, but that's what they would do. So the NSAC Day matters. And to clear something up, it matters not just because we're legally represented, kind of like a union represents a plumber or an electrician when you're on a job and you're not paid fairly and the conditions are wrong. You can strike and your union will support you to make sure you're treated fairly. NSAC is a little bit like that, but does it mean that when we have Spirit Fest, if we have a medium that's here that isn't NSC trained and credentialed, or if we have a healer that isn't an NSC healer, does it mean that there's a difference in accuracy and ability? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It does provide education, and it does provide a path that takes us through the history of teaching, healing, preparing to be a minister, and also, how to do mediumship. It gives us a history and it helps us train and get tested, but it doesn't mean that you're better. It's really important to say that because all over the world, there's other organizations, Spiritualist Federation in UK, and then we've got the International Spiritualist Federation. That's everybody around the world. So there's different trainings. Sometimes it's just one individual that is the trainer. So when I first came to the Church of the Spirit, I remember I walked in. It took me a minute because I didn't know what spiritualism was, and it took me a couple of years actually because I didn't know I could do this. But I saw a class and I walked in, and Reverend Murray said to me, "You're a medium. Who are you?" It's the most shocking words I have ever heard. So I started taking these classes and training. I was very interested. And I remember asking her at the beginning, why isn't our church packed? Why isn't every seat taken? And why don't we just spend all our energy trying to get every seat packed and taken? And she said to me something I thought was very profound. She said, "We don't push, we don't force, we don't market heavily because your people in spirit will guide you here. When you are meant to get here, you will find us." I thought that was profound. She also told me that it's important as spiritualists to just share the facts. We don't have to talk endlessly about it and talk people into things that are true and not true. Just give them the facts, your experience. They'll get it. And she said, it's not just about prophesizing when you're going to meet your spouse. She said it's much more than that. It's about you belonging to a community, you liking the sermon, you feeling that you can teach your own family members when they're transitioning about it. Tell them about spirit and about messages and help them to try to talk to their loved ones on the other side. And they can write a note and get messages in their dreams, all the ways that they can connect to prepare during their transition. And that brings them comfort. And each of you can do that because we all have mediumship as part of our natural skills and talents, even if we don't know it yet. So we teach you here at this church to stay open and also to encourage others to stay open, to try to talk to their loved ones and listen in those quiet times. We offer you the ability to grow your mediumistic connections through classes, and I believe we're going to start up in November. So now I just want you to think about something, how you found your way to our church. At fellowship, we can talk more about this at our tables to each other. There's great food prepared by wonderful people. But I want you to think about how it is that you got here. And I know some of you are sitting far from someone, but I want you to get up, go to someone, and spend 30 seconds telling them how you were guided to find this church, and then spend 30 seconds hearing how they were guided to find this church. Do that right now. Time to switch to the other person in place. Okay, wrap it up. All right, if you could have a seat. Thank you, thank you. What we're gonna do then, during fellowship, whoever is seated at your table, you're gonna tell them what you told the other person, and you're gonna tell them what they told you for how they found their way here. Because you are extraordinarily meaningful just with your stories and how you're living your life. Everything that you do, just being here and making small mentions now and then when it's appropriate outside of this church, make a difference. And you will feel more lightness every day, every week, as you live your life by sharing these little facts, and more joy will be headed your way. The natural law, known as the law of detachment, is that you don't have to worry about what people think of you and think of spiritualists, think of mediums. You just put it out there, you live your life, and let them choose their own path. And don't judge them, and when the time is right, they'll get back to this church, or they'll find another church that has spirit messages. So we just let go of controlling what people think and what they do. But I certainly have enjoyed talking with you today about NSAC Day, and you, because you are the most important message. You are everything. Thank you. Thank you.